Boat watch. Well, my children would describe me as a Winston Churchill nut. There is a bust of the great man in the hall at home. There are biographies aplenty on the bookshelves. Somewhere there is an old CD of his greatest speeches. But while I disagree with those who think he should be dismissed as a vile racist and reprobate, I don't begrudge their right to hold that view. What I do think is outrageous, however, is when a charity set up in his name behaves like they've just discovered a very bad smell. I say this in the context of today's revelation that the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust has renamed itself the Churchill Fellowship, removed all images of him from its website, whilst posting an online blog denouncing his, quote, unacceptable views on race. This was, as The Sun put it, their wokest hour. This rebranding is a grubby, intellectually dishonest way of having your cake and eating it. It's institutional ingratitude on an industrial scale. If a charity established in the name of Winston Churchill is now embarrassed to be associated with him, those who derive a living from it ought to do the honourable thing, disband, disperse their assets and find alternative employment. But that won't happen. Again and again, we've seen charities inch away from their foundational personalities. I can think of one leading charity, I won't name it, whose work is now so far from the opinions or prejudices of the man whose legacy it is, that were he still alive, he'd be appalled to find people earning a living through an institution that still bears his name. It's an example of a deep-rooted flaw in our third sector. It's relatively easy to set up a campaign group or charity, often far less easy to wind it up. It's a rare NGO, non-governmental organisation, that says, do you know what? We've done it. We've achieved our objectives. Mission accomplished. Time to do something else. Charities develop a life, a critical mass of their own. But let's not forget they are charities, not businesses. They rely on bequests, donations and goodwill. As we've seen with the National Trust, donors and volunteers will not stand idly by if a professionalised cast of highly paid charity sector executives decide that their stuffy old organisation needs to go woke. The decision to airbrush Churchill from the charity, which has enjoyed years of generosity in his name, is a disgrace and a thoughtless slur, not against him, he's long dead, but against all those who've supported the trust. It feeds a growing suspicion that many of our charities care more about the values of those who run them than the beliefs of those who created or sustain them. Let's turn to Andrew Doyle for his perspective on this. Andrew, thanks for joining us again. I know you're quarantining with COVID, so we do appreciate you turning up for us like this. There are those people, it seems, who are quite happy to trade on somebody's name, but not necessarily somebody's reputation.
Oh, that's absolutely right. I mean, for instance, when the Roads Must Fall campaign occurred in Oxford and student activists wanted to topple the statue of Cecil Rhodes outside Oriel College, the leader of that activist group himself was a Rhodes Scholar and was receiving over £20,000 a year from the scholarship set up by the man he so hated. So we see this absolutely again and again. And I think your point is absolutely right. If they had the courage of their convictions, they would disband the entire charity. They would have nothing more further to do with Churchill. But of course, this isn't really about Churchill. This is a current trend that they are getting on board with. There's no coincidence, by the way, that the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust, which has now decided to rebrand itself as the Churchill Fellowship, they claim the original name was too confusing. Doesn't strike me as confusing in the least. But it's no coincidence that this has happened at a time when the Trust intends to move into the areas of equality rather than academic funding. So I think that's what's going on here. And certainly we can all agree that some of the things that Churchill said during his lifetime are appalling by our standards.
It's not in question, is it? Andrew, it's just so not in question. And you and I are perfectly happy for people to, as they see it, debunk the myth of the great man. You know, people are complicated. Yeah. People are really complicated, right?
Well, not only are people really complicated, but people who were born in 1874 probably don't share our values. I mean, Winston Churchill was born before the invention of the telephone. If he didn't have some views that we would consider regressive, that would be odd. So it's just this weird idea. And it's very strange to me that, I mean, this is part and parcel of this new mania, this critical social justice mania, which has for purging the past, sitting in judgment, on people who obviously would have had different values than ourselves. And these are the same people, by the way, who continually preach about the values of cultural relativism and how you mustn't judge other cultures by your own standards. And yet they sit in judgment on the past. It's completely incoherent. You know, you have to think in terms of what LP Hartley said at the start of the go-between. The past is a different country. They do things differently there. We have to keep that in mind.
Andrew, thanks very much indeed. We'll talk to you again soon about a different story which has a similar theme, I ought to say. But for now, thanks very much.